In a small coastal town, far from the bustling cities, stood a solitary lighthouse. Its light was a beacon for ships navigating the dark waters, guiding them safely to shore. The lighthouse, built of weathered stone, had stood for over a century, its presence a constant against the ever-changing tides. The winding stairs inside led to a lantern room that offered a panoramic view of the vast ocean, a sight that never ceased to captivate those who were lucky enough to witness it. The keeper of the lighthouse, an elderly man named Elias, had tended to it for decades. His life was simple, governed by the rhythm of the tides and the steady rotation of the lighthouse's beam. Each night, he would climb the stairs, light the lantern, and watch as its warm glow stretched across the water, cutting through the darkness like a sword. Elias took great pride in his work, knowing that the light he maintained was a guide for sailors navigating treacherous waters. Elias lived alone in a small cottage adjacent to the lighthouse. It was a modest home filled with the essentials and a little more. The walls were lined with bookshelves, each shelf packed with old, well-read volumes. The few pictures on the walls were faded with age, depicting scenes of the sea and distant lands he had once dreamed of visiting. A small kitchen was tucked into one corner of the cottage, and in another was a cozy living area with a fireplace that crackled warmly on cold nights. Despite his solitude, Elias was content. He enjoyed the peace and quiet of his life, finding comfort in the predictability of his daily routine. The lighthouse, with its tall, sturdy structure and ever-turning light, was a source of stability in a world that often seemed chaotic and uncertain. Each evening, the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky faded to twilight. Elias would light a small lantern and carry it up the spiral staircase to the lantern room. The walls of the lighthouse were thick, and the stairs echoed softly underfoot as he ascended. When he reached the top, Elias would carefully light the large lantern that sent out the powerful beam, watching as it flickered to life and began its steady rotation. After ensuring the light was functioning properly, Elias would settle into a comfortable chair by the window, sipping tea and listening to the distant sound of the waves crashing against the rocky shore. The ocean had always been a source of solace for him, a reminder of the vastness of the world and the mysteries that lay beyond the horizon. On clear nights, the sky was a tapestry of stars, each one twinkling like a distant beacon in the darkness. Elias would often find himself lost in thought, staring out at the ocean and the sky, contemplating the stories of sailors who had traveled these waters, the adventures they've experienced, and the dangers that they had faced. But despite the peace that the lighthouse brought him, there was always a lingering sense of loneliness. The lighthouse had been his companion for many years, but it was a solitary existence. Elias had long since accepted this, finding contentment in his own company and in the steady, reliable presence of the lighthouse. One evening, as Elias was finishing his tea, he noticed something unusual. Through the foggy mist that had settled over the ocean, a faint light flickered in the distance, far out to sea. It wasn't the light of a ship. It was something softer, more ethereal, like a lantern swaying gently in the wind. So curious and slightly concerned, Elias set down his cup and peered out into the night. The light was growing brighter, slowly making its way toward the shore. Elias squinted, trying to make out the shape of the vessel, but the fog was too thick, obscuring his view. After a moment of hesitation, Elias decided to investigate. He donned his weathered coat, the fabric worn but sturdy, and he stepped into the night. The air was cool and damp, and the sound of the waves was louder than usual, as if the sea was restless. He made his way toward the cliff edge where the lighthouse stood. Elias kept his eyes fixed on the mysterious light. It was closer now, and he could just make out the outline of a small rowboat gliding smoothly through the water. The boat moved with an almost otherworldly grace, as if it were being guided by an unseen hand. Elias waited at the edge of the cliff, watching as the boat approached the shore. The mist parted slightly, revealing the figure of a lone woman standing on the bow of the boat, holding a lantern in one hand. She was dressed in a long cloak that billowed softly in the breeze, and there was an air of calm about her, as if she had journeyed far and was finally at peace. As the boat reached the shore, the woman stepped out, her feet barely making a sound on the pebbled beach. She lifted her head, her eyes meeting Elias's, and she smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that seemed to convey a deep understanding. Elias felt a sense of familiarity wash over him, as if he had known this woman for a very long time, though he was certain they had never met before. There was something timeless about her, something that spoke of ancient knowledge and wisdom. The woman introduced herself as Seraphina, her voice soft and melodic, carrying a warmth that seemed to melt away the chill of the night. She explained that she had been drawn to the lighthouse by its comforting glow, a beacon that had guided her through the fog and, of course, the darkness. Elias, intrigued and slightly awestruck, invited Seraphina into the lighthouse, offering her the warmth and comfort of his home. So together, they made their way back up the path, the mist swirling gently around them as they walked. Inside the lighthouse, the crackling fire in the hearth cast a warm glow over the room, chasing away the dampness of the night. Elias offered Seraphina a cup of tea, and they settled into the cozy living room, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows all over the walls. and as they sat by the fire, Seraphina began to share her story. She had traveled across the seas, she explained, visiting distant lands and remote islands, guided by a deep connection to the spirits of the ocean. She possessed a rare gift, the ability to communicate with spirits of those who had been lost to the waves, souls who now wandered the depths of the sea, searching for peace. Seraphina had made it her mission to guide these spirits to places of solace, where they could find rest and release from their earthly ties. The lighthouse, with its steady, comforting light, was one such place. It was a beacon, not just for sailors, but for those who sought the light, a symbol of hope in the vast, dark expanses of the ocean. Elias listened intently, captivated by Seraphina's words. Her presence was soothing, her voice like a gentle melody that lulled him into a state of deep relaxation. And as she spoke, Elias felt as though he were being drawn into a different world, a world where the boundaries between the living and the dead were blurred, where the spirits of the sea whispered their secrets to those who would listen. Seraphina's stories were filled with vivid imagery of ancient ships lost to the depths, of forgotten islands shrouded in mist, of the spirits who roam the ocean floor, their voices carried on the currents. Elias could almost see the scenes she described, the images forming in his mind like a dream. As the night wore on, the two of them fell into a comfortable rhythm, their conversation flowing effortlessly. Seraphina spoke of the mysteries of the ocean, of the stars that guided the sailors, and of the gentle spirits that whispered in the wind. Elias, in turn, shared his memories of tending to the lighthouse, of the nights spent watching the waves, and the comfort he found in its steady light. There was a sense of timelessness in their conversation, as if the hours were stretching into eternity. The outside world faded away, and all that remained was the warmth of the fire, the sound of the waves, and the soft murmur of their voices. As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, the fire in the hearth had burned down to embers, casting a gentle glow over the room. Seraphina stood, her movements graceful and deliberate, as she was preparing for a journey she had taken many times before. She thanked Elias for his hospitality, for the warmth of his home, and the kindness he had shown her. Before she left, she reached into the folds of her cloak and produced a small, delicate seashell. The shell was smooth and polished, with intricate patterns etched into its surface, as if it had been carved by the hand of the sea itself. Seraphina placed the seashell in Elias's hand, telling him that it was a gift from the spirits of the sea, a token of their gratitude for the light that he kept burning. The shell, she explained, had a special power. If ever Elias needed guidance or protection, he need only hold the shell to his ear and listen to the whispers of the sea. Elias accepted the gift with reverence, Feeling the weight of its significance, he walked with Seraphina to the edge of the cliff, watching as she descended the path to the shore. The morning light bathed the sea in a soft golden glow, and for a moment, everything was perfectly still. The mist that had cloaked the sea all night was beginning to lift, revealing the calm waters that stretched out to the horizon. Seraphina climbed into her rowboat, the small vessel rocking gently as she settled in. She lifted her lantern, now dimmed in the light of dawn, and waved a gentle goodbye to Elias. Her smile was warm, filled with the same quiet wisdom that had drawn Elias to her from the start. As Elias watched, the boat began to drift away, the oars cutting silently through the water. Seraphina's figure grew smaller, gradually fading into the mist, until she was nothing more than a distant silhouette. And then, as the sun rose higher in the sky, she was gone, as if she had never been there at all. Elias stood at the edge of the cliff for a long time, holding the seashell in his hand and feeling a sense of peace wash over him. He knew he would always keep the light burning, not just for the ships at sea, but for the spirits and the travelers like Seraphina who sought comfort and guidance. He made his way back to the lighthouse. Elias felt a deep sense of gratitude for the encounter. It had been a night unlike any other, a night filled with stories, with wisdom, and with a connection that transcends time and space. And though Seraphina was gone, Elias knew that the memory of their meeting would stay with him forever, a reminder of the mysteries of the sea and the light that guided him. Years had passed, and Elias continued his duties as the Lighthouse Keeper. Each night, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky faded to twilight, he would light the lantern and watch its beams stretched across the water, cutting through the darkness like a beacon of hope. The seashell that Seraphina had given him remained on the windowsill in the lantern room, a constant reminder of that fateful night. Elias often found himself holding the shell, listening to the faint whisper of the sea that seemed to emanate from within it. It was a comforting presence, one that made him feel connected to something greater than himself. As Elias grew older, he knew that his time as the keeper would eventually come to an end. His hands, once steady and strong, had begun to tremble with age, and the climb up the lighthouse stairs had become more difficult with each passing year. But he took comfort in knowing that the lighthouse would continue to stand, guiding ships and spirits alike, its light a beacon of hope and peace. Elias had always believed that the lighthouse had a life of its own, that it was more than just a structure of stone and glass. It was a living, breathing entity, one that had witnessed countless storms, countless shipwrecks, and countless moments of beauty and tranquility. It had seen the world change, and yet it had remained steadfast, its light a constant in an ever-changing world. As Elias reflected on his life, he realized that the lighthouse had become a part of him, just as he had become a part of it. They were intertwined, their fates bound together by the light they both kept burning. And in his final years, Elias began to prepare for the day when he would no longer be able to tend to the lighthouse. He trained a young apprentice, a bright and eager young man named Finn, who shared Elias's love for the sea and the light. Finn was a quick learner, and Elias took great pride in passing on his knowledge to the next generation. Elias knew that Finn would be a good keeper, one who would honor the legacy of the lighthouse and continue to guide ships and spirits through the dark waters. And when the time came for Elias to step down, he did so with a sense of peace, knowing that the light would continue to shine. In the years that followed, Elias would often visit the lighthouse, sitting in the lantern room and watching as Finn lit the lantern each night. The seashell still sat on the windowsill, its delicate pattern a reminder of the mysteries of the sea and the wisdom of the spirits who had guided Elias through his life. Elias passed away peacefully one night, his heart filled with the knowledge that he had lived a good life, one filled with purpose and meaning. He had been a keeper of the light, a guide for those who had lost their way, and a friend to the spirits of the sea. Finn, now the sole keeper of the lighthouse, continued to honor Elias's legacy. He kept the lantern burning bright each night, just as Elias had taught him, and he listened to the whispers of the sea that emanated from the seashell. And so the lighthouse remained a sanctuary, its light shining brightly through the night, a symbol of safety for all who traveled the seas. And somewhere, out on the water, Seraphina continued her journey, her lantern glowing softly as she guided lost souls of the night. Now, years later, long after Elias had passed, Finn continued to honor the legacy left behind. He had become a beloved figure in a small coastal town known for its dedication to the lighthouse and his deep connection to the sea. He often thought of Elias, especially on quiet nights when the ocean was calm and the stars twinkled like diamonds in the sky. And one such night, as Finn was preparing to light the lantern, he noticed a familiar sight. Far out at sea, a faint light flickered through the mist, moving steadily towards the shore. Finn's heart skipped a beat as he realized what he was seeing. Seraphina had returned. Without hesitation, Finn made his way to the edge of the cliff, just as Elias had done those years ago. The night was cool, and the mist was thick, but Finn could see the soft glow of the lantern growing brighter as the boat approached. When Seraphina's rowboat finally reached the shore, Finn felt a sense of awe and reverence wash over him. Seraphina looked just as she had in Elias's stories. Timeless, serene, and full of wisdom, She stepped out of the boat with the same grace as before, her lantern casting a warm, comforting light. Seraphina smiled at Finn, her eyes filled with recognition and warmth. "It's good to see you, Finn," she said softly. "You've done well to keep the light burning." Finn nodded, his voice catching in his throat. "Thank you, Seraphina. Elias spoke of you often. He had you in great regard." "And I him," Seraphina replied, her smile deepening. "Elias was a true keeper of the light, as you are. The spirits of the sea have watched over you, just as they watched over him." And as they walked back to the lighthouse together, Finn felt an overwhelming sense of connection, not just to Elias and Seraphina, but to the entire lineage of Lighthouse Keepers who had come before him. He realized that he was part of something much larger than himself, a legacy of light and guidance that stretched back through the ages. Inside the lighthouse, Seraphina and Finn sat by the fire, just as she had done with Elias so many years before. Seraphina shared new stories of her journeys across the seas, of the spirits she had guided, and the wisdom she gained. Finn listened with rapt attention, soaking in every word. And as the night went on, Seraphina placed a hand on Finn's shoulder. "You have done well, Finn," she said gently, "but it's time for you to pass on the legacy, just as Elias passed it on to you. The lighthouse will always need a keeper, someone to guide the ships and the spirits through the darkness." Finn nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had been thinking about the future, about the day when he would no longer be able to tend to the lighthouse. He knew that time would come for him to find an apprentice, someone to carry the legacy. Seraphina reached into the folds of her cloak and produced a small, delicate seashell, just like the one she had given to Elias. She handed it to Finn, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "This shell will guide you, just as it guided Elias. Listen to its whispers, and you will know when the time is right to pass on the light." So Finn accepted the shell with reverence, feeling its smooth surface against his fingertips. He knew that it was more than just a shell. It was a symbol of connection between the living and the spirits, between the past and the future. So Finn accepted the shell with reverence. As dawn began to break over the horizon, Seraphina stood to leave. Finn walked with her to the edge of the cliff, watching as she climbed back into her rowboat. The mist was beginning to lift, revealing the calm waters that stretched all the way out to the horizon. Seraphina waved a gentle goodbye, her lantern glowing softly in the early morning light. Finn watched as the boat drifted away, disappearing into the mist, just as it had done before. He stood at the edge of the cliff for a long time, holding the seashell in his hand and feeling a sense of peace wash over him. He knew that he would always keep the lighthouse burning, not just for the ships at sea, but for the spirits and travelers like Seraphina, who had sought comfort and guidance. As he made his way back to the lighthouse, Finn felt a deep sense of gratitude. It had been a night unlike any other, a night filled with stories, with wisdom, and with the connection that transcends time and space. And though Seraphina was gone, Finn knew that the memory of her meeting would stay with him forever, a reminder of the mysteries of the sea and the light that guided him.